Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Terrence Canelli, and I am General Counsel for the Steamship Authority. We're here to conduct a public hearing pursuant to Section 15 of the Authorities Enabling Act concerning its proposed 2025 operating schedules. I would like to inform everyone that Sean Driscoll, the Authority's Communication Director, is making an audio and video recording of today's hearing. The hearing is conducted by the Steamship Authority today. It is not a board meeting. Therefore, while Authority board members may be in attendance, they will not be deliberating on the proposed schedule changes today or otherwise responding to any testimony at this time. Today's recording of the hearing will also be made available to all interested parties so that they can view it after the hearing is concluded. At this time, I'd like to introduce some of the members of the Authority's management staff.
We said, have our hand up, this sheet recording.
We, no, on this one, we don't.
No, we're okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, we're okay, because it's not that big. At this time, I'd like to introduce some of the members of the Authority's management staff who are here today, whose responsibilities include our reservations and terminal operations. To my right is General Manager Robert Davis. To my left, Director of Shoreside Operations, Allison Fletcher. And to Mr. Davis's right, who's off the screen here, is Mr. Higgins, but he can certainly say something and get on the screen if you'd like to.
Good morning, or good afternoon, everyone.
The Authorities Enabling Act requires the authority to post and advertise in newspapers with general circulation in Falmouth, Barnstable, Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, and New Bedford. All of its proposed schedule changes at least 60 days prior to their effective date. Accordingly, in March, the authority placed newspaper advertisements of its proposed 2025 operating schedule for the period from January 4th, 2025 through January 4th, 2026. The Authorities Enabling Act also provides that if the authority receives a petition within 30 days of those advertisements that is signed by not less than 50 persons who are residents of any of those communities requesting a public hearing on proposed schedule changes, the authority should conduct a public hearing within 14 days of receiving the petition. On April 29th, the authority received a petition with respect to its proposed 2025 operating schedules between Woods Hole and Martha's Vineyard and Hyannis and Nantucket. It was signed by 79 residents of the town of Falmouth, 1 resident of the town of Bourne, 1 resident of the town of Carlisle, and 1 resident of the city of Cambridge. And as a result, we are conducting today's hearing. We will receive testimony regarding the authority's proposed schedule changes to ensure that we gain the benefit of the views of the parties affected. The authority will also consider written testimony that is submitted regarding the proposed schedule changes. But we ask that written testimony be submitted as soon as possible after today's hearing to ensure that it is timely considered. Written testimony can be emailed to schedules@steamshipping.com. During this hearing, we will not be accepting comments or questions via Zoom chat function, which has been turned off. If there are additional comments or questions you wish to submit in writing, please email them to the schedules@steamshipauthority.com email address. In their petition, the petitioners object to the authority's proposed 2025 operating schedules between Woods Hole and Martha's Vineyard, as announced in the authority's newspaper advertisements as well as on our website. As advertised, the authority's proposed 2025 freight operating schedules between Woods Hole and Martha's Vineyard would be essentially the same operating schedules that were approved for 2024, as well as the same freight operating schedules we ran in 2018, 2019, 2021, 2022, and 2023. And also were approved for 2020 before our schedules were modified because of the coronavirus pandemic. For 2025, the authority is proposing to operate a 5:30 a.m. freight trip from Vineyard Haven, with various vessels arriving in Woods Hole at approximately 6:15 a.m. For 2025, the authority is also proposing to operate a 5:30 freight trip from Woods Hole only during its late spring and summer operating schedules with the motor vessel Governor from May 13th through October 24th. The authority is also proposing to continue to limit the size of the trucks the authority carries on its 5:30 a.m. freight trip from Woods Hole to trucks that are less than 40 feet in length, which we began doing in 2018, so that less noise is generated by the trucks that drive to the authority's Woods Hole terminal in the early morning hours. After receiving and reviewing the oral and written testimony provided through this hearing process, the staff will prepare one or more draft reports recommending either that the authority maintain portions of its 2025 schedules as originally proposed, or that it make modifications to those proposed schedules. The staff will also explain the reasons for the recommendations, summarize the oral testimony received, and attach all the written testimony received. When each draft report is prepared, it will be forwarded to the authority's board and full council members, and then posted on the authority's website. We will also email people to let them know the availability of the draft report on our website if they have provided us with their email addresses through their written testimony, or if they email us later asking to be notified. Again, all email requests should be sent to schedules@steamshipauthority.com. We will now call on members of the public who have joined this hearing via the Zoom conference application who indicate that they want to give testimony. Because the petition objects generally to the authority's proposed 2025 freight operating schedules between Woods Hole and Martha's Vineyard, Nat Trumbull, who submitted the petition on behalf of the petitioners, should be the first person to testify today. Although I do note that there may be some public officials who are there, and at first glance here, I see Mr. Brown from the town of Falmouth is top of the list there, so perhaps Mr. Brown should go first. In any event, please note that this hearing is not an adjudicatory proceeding. Therefore, we will not be asking people to testify under oath, nor will we restrict people's comments to testimony that conforms to the rules of evidence observed by courts. Finally, I would ask those who testify to keep in mind that we'd like everyone who wants to give testimony today to have a fair opportunity to testify. And in the event we don't receive comments, we encourage everyone to submit written testimony as soon as possible after the hearing by emailing it to schedules@steamshipauthority.com. So with that, if Mr. Brown, if you would like to testify first, please click the raise my hand icon on your Zoom screen.
It was already,
Okay, great. Or by pressing the star. Okay, thank you. And I would also ask everyone else who would like to testify to click on the raise my hand icon on your Zoom screen, or if you're joining us by telephone, to press star 9 on your telephone. And if you're not speaking, we ask that you please mute your microphone as a courtesy to those people who are speaking and those people who wish to clearly hear the other speakers. And thank you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Brown, who appears to be in his vehicle.
Yes, sir. I'm not driving though. I'm parked. Thank you for having me here today. I appreciate it. Just a few quick comments. I'm not going to take a lot of your time. The first thing I'd like to say is I know when you have to have these meetings within 14 days of receiving the petition. I would request that when you receive the petition, if you could send out an email to generally interested parties such as Select Board, the Smart Group, whoever else has been showing an interest, notify us that the petition is received and that comment period is open. I'd like to know if we could have 7 days notice rather than just a few, because it's difficult for people to attend at a short notice, especially during working hours at 3 p.m. I would note that most of these type of meetings are held after 5 p.m. for the convenience of the public. If that's possible, I would appreciate it. So with comments regarding the 5:30 vote, there's been no action recently by the Select Board, but as you know, you have a standing letter from the Select Board requesting the discontinuation of the 5:30 vote. This seems to me an opportunity this year with the larger boats coming online. You've got a 25% greater capacity, I believe, and you've got an extra lane. Seems like an opportunity to adjust that schedule, fill in some of that mid-morning time when it's slack, and start managing this freight a little more expeditiously so that we can eliminate the 5:30 vote. It just doesn't seem like you're considering that, and I hope you will consider it going forward. The 40-foot minimum, that's not a small truck. So I appreciate the fact that you have that minimum standard, but it's not like that's a minor thing. Those are the gist of my comments. I mean, I don't really need to take a lot of time. We'll let other people speak. And I appreciate your consideration. And if you would like us to, I suppose our Select Board could refresh the letter and get a sense of the current members of the board. So maybe I'll bring that to our Select Board at our next meeting and send correspondence following. I don't know if that's within your window, but you can keep it on record if that's such a letter comes forward. All right, that's my comments. Thank you.
And Mr. Brown, sure, please, if you have some more written testimony or anything you want to send in, please have the board do that. And if they could do it as soon as possible, that would be great.
Well, we just met last night, so the timing is tricky for us, but I
Yeah.
will ask Chair to put it on the next board meeting for update and future consideration. Okay? Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you, sir. All right, who do we have next there, Sean? Is Mr. Trumbull there?
Yeah. Want me to bring him over?
Sure.
Greetings, Nat Trumbull. My first question is whether there are any members of the board at this meeting?
There are, the only people who are, well, Stephen Coleman from our IT department has joined us since my introduction, but there are no board members here in Falmouth with us today, correct? There'll be, oh, I'm sorry, and I do see actually Mr. Jeffrey is, and Mr. Randy are also on the Zoom list.
And all the board will be given a link to the recording.
So so to answer your question, that there are two people on Zoom, and again, like we said earlier, this is all being recorded and will be provided to them.
Right. I'll make a single comment now, and maybe I can come back and pick up with some other comments later. And that comment is how disappointing it is to first receive confirmation acknowledgement of our petition only on Friday afternoon, that is basically 2 business days ago, with news of first receipt confirmation and news that the hearing would be today. 3 p.m. is not ideal. And it's surprising to me that there is no in-person option when a few weeks ago there was another public hearing and there was an in-person option as well. Finally, for now, I've also been disappointed. Twice I've written Bob Davis asking for myself and for others for an explanation of why the 5:30 a.m. from the vineyard has to run 365 days of the year in your view, except I believe the last 6 weeks when that boat has not been running for technical issues. And well, I'd be interested in how that's been going for the last 6 weeks and generally the justification for having to run that 5:30 a.m. from the vineyard day in and day out. That's it for now. Thanks.
Well, I think just on that last point, Mr. Trumbull, I think that's going to be part of the report because that issue was raised in the petition. So we'll be sure to address that in the report regarding the 5:30 trip off island. Okay, so who do we have next, Sean?
John Woodwell. So John Woodwell is next, and then Suzanne Cutler after that.
Yeah, that's what we say. This was
Okay. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir, we can. Go right ahead, please.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So after decades of doing everything it can to claim that it doesn't work to run freight through New Bedford, even the Steamship Authority can no longer deny that it does work. Not only is it economic to run freight and cars and people between New Bedford and Martha's Vineyard, it's economic to run them twice that distance between New Bedford and Nantucket. All this is now undeniable by the Steamship Authority, and all because of this initial miscommunication between UPS and the Steamship Authority over freight to Nantucket. So this seems like a strange sight. The Steamship Authority forced to accept a more functional transportation system, one that it has for decades forbidden. 41 North is ready and willing to deliver early morning freight to Martha's Vineyard. And in the process, it's going to pay taxes instead of the opposite, spend taxpayer money the way the Steamship Authority does. Now, even if 41 North weren't ready and able to carry early morning freight, the Steamship Authority still has no defense of its 530 freight boat. Even the, let's see, even, well, now that the cat is out of the bag, the Steamship Authority still has no explanation, real or imagined, no real reason to run a 530 freight boat out of Woods Hole beyond the convenience of truckers. Now, so this is kind of interesting. When the Steamship Authority didn't have straws to grab, it was the head of Martha's Vineyard Hospital that sent a letter around that the Steamship Authority waived as its sole evidence that it needs to run a 530 freight boat. That letter had nothing but specious arguments in it, like the one about how passengers on the freight ferry need it to get to work at the hospital, as though you need to run a freight ferry to get those people to work. Since then, she's noted that it was the local politicians who asked her to send that letter. So there's nothing left, no remaining claim of a reason to run a 530 freight boat beyond the convenience of truckers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Llewellyn. Ms. Cutler, I believe, is next, Sean.
Correct. And then Kristen Alexander will be after that.
Okay. Ms. Cutler, are you there? I think you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now. That's correct. Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear now.
Yeah, I can do the video too.
Okay,
No, it says stop. Oh, there.
there you are. Oh, you
Okay,
came in,
got
you came in
It
with. There
didn't
you
come
are.
up originally. I'll have to read this because I'm not a public speaker, so it's a bit longer. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. My topic is better outcomes, and that's regarding the 530 ferry. We're here because the Steamship Authority management and staff are not absorbing the seriousness of sleep deprivation, whether short or long-term. Sleep is a time-sensitive lifeline for each of us. Please respect this basic life condition and reorganize your scheduling in 2025 to reestablish normal sleep hours for the affected community. Smaller trucks have not reduced the sleep disruption, and early incoming trucks also add to the sleep disruption around the year. Take us seriously. Triage is difficult, but necessary in complicated situations. Go ahead, prioritize time-sensitive sleep over the 5:30 a.m. freight. The weighted voting system is also propping up the early delivery schedule. This is silencing the local community. By contrast, all who use the terminal are actually dependent on Woods Hole as a lifeline. Respect the Woods Hole contribution and adjust to our pre-existing priorities like sleep. Martha's Vineyard has its own geographical limitations, very similar to those of Woods Hole. There are bottlenecks everywhere. Woods Hole cannot and should not be expected to solve all the complexities of the vineyard freight needs and timing requests. Local community members have prioritized time-sensitive freight from Woods Hole, but not at 5:30 a.m. Surely your mandate does not include any right to do harm. Property ownership does not include a right to do harm. Use of a state-maintained roadway does not include the right to do harm. Travel time preferences are not supposed to do harm. Woods Hole will never be designated as an industrial port. This circumstance has consequences like residential neighborhoods, a designation that's carried a long history of state and local support. All parties that use the Steamship Authority terminal need to come to terms with the real situation. People live here. Pushing limits is actively causing harm. Your new boats can carry more. A later arrival on the vineyard is the right thing to do out of respect and decency for the landside lifeline. A lifeline to the vineyard is not possible without us. And I really don't think you're listening to us all these years. We started in 2018. The fact that you have the vote that says you want it doesn't mean that that's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cutler. Ms. Alexander and then, Mary, help me, Sean.
Nope. Mayor,
Mary, and Mary, I really don't, I want to do your last name justice, I'm sorry, it's, Chia? Ushada? Chia? Anyway, Mary, you're next after Ms. Alexander.
Mayor.
I apologize. This is Ms. Alexander.
Hi, thank you for the meeting. I just want to reiterate what Doug Brown and Nat Trumbull said, and I also want to add in that this is affecting residents who don't live along the Woods Hole Road corridor. I've moved away from there. You know, there's been a lot of people in the Vineyard who have comments about, well, we should just not live there. And I just want to comment that I have moved away from there. I'm a mile away from the road and it affects me every single day. And since 2018, I've been coming to these meetings and I haven't seen anything happening from the board of the steamship that shows any respect to the town of Falmouth or the residents along the corridor from Falmouth, actually from Bourne all the way down to Woods Hole. I haven't seen anything happen since 2018. I'm going to continue to be on these meetings whenever I can, as long as I'm alive, because I think it's really incredible that the Steamship Authority has not taken into account what this is doing to the town. And, you know, at a certain point, things have to change. You need to listen. You need to do something about it. The 40-foot minimum, you have extra room on your boats now, and it's got to change. And you have to, at a certain point, start listening to people. You know, it just has to happen. And that's, you know, that's really, I feel it's time.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander. Okay, so Mary's up next and then Mr. Goldman is up, on deck, so. Mary, are you there?
Yes, I am. And
Okay, great.
I thank you very
apologize.
much.
And
I thank you
apologize
very much for the
pushing
meeting.
it.
You can see my background that I put up for all my Zoom calls. So that's my way of saying my heart's always in Woods Hole. I've been coming here since before I was born. And what I would like to say is thank you for the meeting, but I'm very disappointed in the way that the notice was given and the timing of it. I know the statute and the requirement for 14 days, but really, it feels like this was done in a way that it would not get the most participation. With that said, I feel very strongly that larger freight carriers, that 5:30, now that you have the larger boats, that 5:30 time frame is not needed because you can transfer that carriage over to the larger boats. Since 2001, when the Cass report was done, there has been a recognition that this community of Woods Hole has been, and they use the word angered in there, has been concerned, angered, frustrated by the amount of traffic that is pushed into that town, which is landlocked, it can't grow, and it's not a freight port. The non-time sensitive freight should be moved to a location that's designed for freight, which is New Bedford. It should be moved to a location that is really better for them as well as for the community of Woods Hole. When those two bridges are being under construction, if we think that there's backup traffic at the bridges now, wait till that happens. So again, the 5:30 is just one part of the issue associated with what is going on. Since 2011 to 2023, by the public statistics, there has been nothing but a growth in the freight traffic. It has never gone down. If you just look at the last couple of years and you look at the waste, why vineyard waste is coming off the vineyard, why septic tanks and trucks are coming off the vineyard, don't know, and there may be no choices. But those trucks which are carrying trash, septic material, are coming through the town in greater numbers. Somewhere along the line, it's got to stop. I volunteer at the public library every summer since COVID, where they have the outdoor book sale. So I sit there for several hours right at the Woods Hole Public Library, and I see the traffic and I see the behaviors of not just the truckers, but the motorcyclists and everybody else in those hours. And if that's even remotely close to what goes on at 5:30 in the morning, we got big problems. So what I would really seriously and heartfelt ask is that the board, the management, really rework their scheduling. You got your bigger boats. It's time to fill them, not increasing the traffic. You signed a deal with Hyannis to try to keep, and even with Woods Hole, to try to keep the growth down to other levels. This is again part of the Cass report. And it hasn't been successful. We have got to figure out a way to keep the freight down as it's trying to go through Woods Hole. And I know that the people in Vineyard Haven, they too are struggling with the amount of freight. But we're more of the, we can't do anything. Martha's Vineyard residents and the vineyard can decide how to manage their growth. But we're a sort of a victim of their growth, not a victim of our own growth. We're a victim of their growth. And so it's a point where somewhere along the line, all of these communities have got to get together, including the Steamship Authority, and say, we can't keep pumping large volumes through a community that cannot expand. You can't expand the road. You can't expand the fort anymore. You're putting in ticketing windows that aren't, in my opinion, needed because I go there every year. But with all that said, somewhere it's going to have to give. And maybe the bridges will cause it to give. But I'd like to think that the Steamship Authority plans to be a master of its own fate and not wait for something to really push it where there's a disaster of some magnitude that none of us can control. And so those are my comments. I thank you for having the meeting. I wish it could be in person. If it was in a week later, I would have been there. So I appreciate it, and thank you.
Thank you, Marion. All right, Mr. Goldman is up, and then Ms. Laster is after Mr. Goldman.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir. Go right ahead.
Well, many of the previous speakers have basically reiterated my feelings as they have since 2018 and some before. But I wanted to know, of the four people that are sitting in front of me, do any of you live on or near Woods Hole Road or 28 from Bourne? I'm looking for a response. I'm not asking for your address. I'm asking for the answer to that question.
The answer to that question is no, sir. So go right ahead.
Okay. The reason I'm saying that is because that's a first in my experience of a response that is directed to a fact. John Woodwell is a very good speaker and a very good statistician who tells us numbers and tells us facts, as does Mary. The bottom line is, if you go into Falmouth, there is so much change afoot that basically warrants more traffic. If you go into Woods Hole, there's also huge impacts from development, something that really hasn't happened here for a long time, which basically will have a negative impact on traffic. It'll increase it. The 530 boat is always a sticking point because of your intransigence, your inability to either deal with the emotional content from a community that you are vested in, or because you are trying to fulfill a mission that may not be in the best interest of any of the port towns, specifically Woods Hole. So it really, really astounds me that this continues like this, because it's an act of malfeasance, really. It's the bull in the china shop attitude. And I'm not sure I understand your game plan, your community relations. The letter that Allison wrote in response, I think, to Nat regarding a shipper who was a third party, which would make it difficult for the SSA to identify the driver, was very cavalier. I'm sorry, Ms. Fletcher, but it's cavalier in the sense that you can eschew any kind of attempt for culpability or really responsible response. In other words, this is a quote: "Chances are we will not have that truck and driver down here anytime soon." Well, if you can't identify the person, how do you even know that that's possible? Okay, so these are the little things, and that's what we've been reduced to. We've been reduced to the petty little parts that we hope can put a chink in the armor. But the reality is there are facts, and those facts are the community in which you operate is affected, and you, as the affector, will take no responsibility for that when we ask you, both by petition in multiple numbers and by even our elected officials. Doug Brown, in asking for the very simple, petty, but simple part of it, Mary said this too, about the arrangements, about how you want to hear the information. You know, it's not rocket science to tell us that it can't be changed. But when I see all the big buildings and basically new fights for new communities within the town of Falmouth that are massive, and in Woods Hole, I am gobsmacked at how there's a huge disconnect with one of the largest institutions, meaning the SSA, in our region, having an impact from Bourne to Woods Hole, to the Vineyard, and to Nantucket, and how that process is not completely understood by you in terms of its effects on us. And, you know, like Mary, my family has been there since the 1950s, so 70 some odd years. And the changes are to be expected. But with the SSA, I remember the old Nobska. I mean, this was a long time ago, and I remember it with fondness, as I remember Steve Laster saying he too had these great fondnesses for the old ferries. That's water under the bridge, because now we have these massive boats that are an aging technology, which we've gone over until we're blue in the face. And whether they serve your purposes or not, they also cause an opening of quantity because it allows more shipping possibilities. I sit here at my desk in my studio, and I have this old sticker left over from probably, I don't know, before 2018. It's time to think New Bedford. That's been there for 20 years. And I just think the world is really being separated back into tribalness, and your tribal sense against the rest of the place that you occupy is combative, and it doesn't need to be that way. It needs to be empathic. It needs to be seeing the world with arms open, not closed. You know, there's no outreach for that when it comes time for the possibility for alternative energy. That's put together and pushed forward, not by BIA, but by the crowd at Falmouth High School at a meeting long ago before the HMI report was delivered. And that goes under the bridge just like everything else. So I just think that you do what you do for your own efficacy, and so be it, I suppose. Villagers can just take it. That's what it is. Now, you know, I hope that I'm appealing to your reasonableness, because the only opportunities in this airing for us to come outside of our bubbles, outside of our tribal mentalities, is to meet in public, and even better in the real world, not virtual, because we breathe the same air. All that stuff is important. And if you're not getting our story after banging our heads against the wall for years, for decades, this becomes untenable. So I basically, since COVID, have decided, you know, we're all locked down, we're all inside, but I really have given up hope that you will hear us. Yes, you sit there. And Mr. Keneally, you're the spokesman there, so it's your voice that we hear, mostly. But this is a leadership question. And I really think that the way you operate in a public framework, whether it's the website, whether it's, you know, ship failings, whatever it is, these things become untenable. So that's basically all I wanted to say. I really hope things change with all the massive growth that we're seeing, but I don't hold out much hope. I think that New Bedford, we had to claw to get to where we've gotten. But as John said, the facts are on the table, and you know them and we know them. So how do we get this tribe to be made larger, more inclusive, and take in what we've been saying? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. Let me see, who we have next, Sean? You're clicking much too fast, right? I'm sorry, I see Mr. Pitzel.
Yeah.
And then I see Ms. Laster after.
Ms. Laster had been first.
Oh, she was actually, that's correct. So let's take Ms. Laster, because I believe she was ahead of Mr. Pitzel before, so.
I would like to state that although the image on the screen is of the Woods Hole Film Festival, these opinions are mine and not the Woods Hole Film Festival's. So for the record, my name is Judy Laster. I'm sorry that we have to be here again, because this is, I don't know how many years we've been doing this, the same dynamic each time. We beg you, you stare at us like you're in pain to have to even listen to us. Believe us, we're in much more pain having to be here talking to you about this. Does it have to be a painful interaction? Probably not, but I don't have any hope that it's going to be otherwise. So rather than giving you guys the benefit of my thoughts and my testimony, I'm going to be asking questions, which I would like a written response to in the report that you issue. And I would like to make sure that any report that you issue has had a vote of your board of directors, and that those directors actually agree with your statements, because I have no faith in anything ultimately at this point that you as a staff tell us. So here are the questions. Please write them down. Who makes the decisions at the Steamship Authority regarding scheduling and for whose benefit? What kind of consideration do you actually give a hearing like this and the testimony that we've given you the benefit of having for many, many years? Understand that we are offering you our time, expertise, information, suggestions, because you are careening into a future which you are going to crash, and you're going to crash hard. And at that time, you're going to come begging for the community to assist you in trying to rebuild the Steamship Authority. Please give us a financial analysis of how you make your decisions about scheduling and for whose benefit. Is it just for the trucking industry? Somehow the Steamship Authority makes money out of your scheduling decisions. When you initially stated that you were putting the 5:30 trip into place, you said, we will reconsider it if the community wants to reconsider it. This is not a permanent thing. Was that a true statement, or were you just saying it to appease us and hope that we would actually believe what you were saying? When do you plan to write the recommendations to your board, and how do you make those recommendations? Have they been written already? And is this hearing just perfunctory? Is your plan, now that you have bigger boats and probably need to pay for them, to actually expand your schedule in Woods Hole year round? I've heard people say that ultimately you're going to be going 24 hours. If that's the case, I want to know right now. Which lobbyists do you consult with on a regular basis to make sure that the community of Woods Hole has no voice and people do not consider anything that we're requesting? And are there minority opinions in the reports that you issue? And if so, how do those minority opinions get into your reports? Basically, I would also like to have somebody have a hearing that's an actual hearing. This is not a hearing under the Massachusetts general laws where there's testimony given, sworn testimony. I would like to have a hearing where everybody is under oath. And so I would like you to also be under oath. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Latham.
This last area would be beneficial if we could forward those questions along so we didn't miss anything.
Okay, so we have Mr. Fitzell. I believe that's Mr. Fitzell.
Yes.
I think it's Ted, right? Is that Ted? Then I see Mr. Cutler has his hand up next as well. Yes. Mr. Fitzell, are you there, please? Sir? We see you're muted with your hand up.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, sir. Loud and clear. Go right ahead, please.
Okay, well, I was asking if we couldn't shake up the order of the meeting and have Mr. Davis answer this one question. What is it that requires the 5:30 boat from Woods Hole that is more important than the health and safety of the residents of your main port? If he could answer that question, that would help a lot of us. Thank you.
Well, as I said earlier, sir, we're not going to be giving testimony on our end today. Again, the point of the meeting or the hearing today is to gather the information so we can draft the report and make the recommendations to the board. So we can address that in the report if you'd like us to do that, and we will certainly do that. And add it to the list that Ms. Laster gave to us. Is there anything else, Mr. Fitzell?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. And I see Mr. Coupler has his hand up, and I don't see anyone else's hand, so if anyone else would like to add comments, please raise your hand or press *9 on your keypad, and we'll bring it to the floor. But for now, Mr. Coupler has the floor. I see you muted there, sir. There you are. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to be as generous as most of the previous speakers because I see very little reason to be generous with you guys. You've absolutely shown zero concern about the well-being of the Cape, especially Woods Hole. I think when you told us you knew immediately when you proposed the 530 boat that there was opposition. And I believe it was a sham when you said that you would consider canceling the boat if it was opposed to. Since then, you have not done anything to show consideration for the needs of the community. You have made little concessions, trying to treat us like little children. We'll shorten the length of the trucks, but we'll put more trucks. Nothing has changed. This is just like the massive building you want to build. You've insisted on building it. You said it could not be changed. It was fixed. Then you change it. Then you say you couldn't move it. Then you move it. There's no reason to believe anything that you have has substance in it. Is this lying? No, I just don't believe you're telling the truth. I don't think you're capable of telling the truth and coming clean with us. And as Judy asked, she wants facts. We all want facts. We want to know where you're coming from, where you're going. But from what I see, it's just seat of the pants. You have no idea what's lying ahead except scheming, getting bigger boats, more capacity to carry, as somebody just said, perhaps even running 24/7. I don't think there's any concern in your mind about the impact that you have on so many people, day in, day out, year after year. There's not a single indication that you have any sympathy to anybody or anything except yourselves. However, you do seem to be very sympathetic with everything that's wanted by the restaurateurs and developmenters of the vineyard. Why don't you show some compassion and some interest in those of us who you're harming all the time? The reluctance of anybody to say, no, I don't live near the steamship corridor, that shows you don't really want to share anything. The refusal of the general manager to make any comment. You say, oh, we don't make comments. Well, you never make comments. You never actually address any of our questions. I would be really remarkably surprised if you answer any of Judy's questions in the thoroughness that's required and with complete honesty. I would like to see a steamship authority that's part of the community, constructive, sympathetic, and bending over to help us, not just help yourself and a few people on the vineyard. I'm afraid that when you get your new boats, you're going to have the big boats with 25% greater capacity running 530. That's going to be more traffic. Again, more abuse from you guys. Lack of sympathy. You didn't have to do that. Gas guzzlers. Where is your forethinking? You seem to have something else in mind entirely. Again, you don't allow passengers on the barge or boats coming out of New Bedford. I think that's a way to scuttle it. How do you expect the truckers to actually manage when they have to cut independent transport from New Bedford to Woods Hole? What happens if their bus or truck or whatever way they're getting to Woods Hole breaks down? What are you going to do when one of your huge boats arrives in Vineyard Haven with trucks without a trucker to move them? Where's your forethought? How are you guys going to manage this? What are you going to do when the Vineyard and Nantucket people say, wait, you're going to be overboard. Nobody's going to support you. You're going to have no sympathy from anybody. You've lost all elements of integrity and anybody's confidence. I would like to hear truth from you guys, not more babble, not more delays, not more of these kind of meetings where you sit there in awe of yourselves, bored as hell, looking terrified that we might ask harsh questions or behave like me, which you think is rude and crass. No, we're not rude and crass. You are the abusive ones. Our communities are suffering and suffering terribly. You guys go home at night, you sleep well, you sleep into the morning when it's comfortable for you. You ought to try and live in along the corridor and see what other people are suffering. I will not say thank you because there's nothing to thank the Steamship Authority except for abundance of abuse. That's it.
Okay, moving on to Mr. Trumbull. Mr. Trumbull, are you there, sir? It appears you have yourself muted there, Nat.
Thanks. Sean, I'm going to try to share a slide. Let's begin with this. This is the steam. Is this visible, the slide?
Yes.
This is the steamship's reported numbers of trucks carried between total numbers annually carried between Woods Hole and the Vineyard for the last 12 years now. And there was a dip during COVID, but the overall trend is increase on average of 3.75, almost 4% growth per year. And this reflects many things, growth in the Vineyard, of course, among others. But I'd also like you to next consider, shift the slide. What the now scheduled Aquinnah, which is appearing in your schedule, and to me, it doesn't sound right when you say we have the same schedule, but you really need to say, and we have a larger boat coming on. And I've looked as carefully as information provided allows, and my understanding is the Aquinnah and the Barnstable will have 25% larger deck space. And this, I've also seen the numbers of 39 vehicles you can now carry on the Sankaty, and I saw a sketch where you would have 50 vehicles on the deck of the Aquinnah. So to me, this is a 25% increase. And so when one looks at a graph of current, so that very same, if one looks at the dark blue bars between 2012 up through 2023, these are your reported total numbers. I've placed next to them a 3.75, that very same average, and simply projected it until the end of the decade. Again, a 3.75 average increase. And then I've added that extra deck space of the Aquinnah. And I don't know, I've asked, but no one's been able to tell me. Bob Davis, I asked you this and you were couldn't say whether or not this will be that larger 25% increase would allow for 3 additional trucks on each run of the Aquinnah, possibly 2. I don't have information other than the sketches I've seen where current 39 vehicles can next carry 50 vehicles on the Aquinnah. But I have made the assumption that you may be able to carry an additional 3 trucks on each run of the Aquinnah. And during some parts of the year, this is 7 additional round trips. You run most of your vessels 7 round trips a day. That is 14 one-way trips. And this is an additional, as I see it, 6,500 truck capacity with your existing schedule, which is what you're basically offering us. So suddenly you have a much larger capacity, and you may say, well, we're only going to be able to get 2 additional trucks on this larger vessel. And so I've plotted that here as well. So instead of the green, we'll have light blue bars here. That's a 4,400 truck increase annually. Well, you're way up with your total. And when I look at your 60+ trips during the summer, to me, this additional deck space is the equivalent of a whole round trip that you could eliminate or schedule less frequently. That would still provide the current capacity you have with these much larger ships. And to continue to hear your intransigence about the 5:30 a.m. boat, to me, just defies logic and makes no sense given the extra space you will be providing. And I know Jim Malkin's view is all important to you. And I did want to just quote what Mr. Malkin has said at your March board meeting. I just want to repeat so the board hears directly from me a comment I made to the Port Council at their meeting when they were discussing the proposed schedule and specifically relating to the 5:30 a.m. summer schedule out of Woods Hole. Then he goes on, we feel it's necessary to get those trucks on the island early to get them off the streets in the summer season when our visitors throng our streets. Well, that is one point of view. But to me, when I think of, and I think you can get 14 or so of your 40-foot trucks on the 5:30 out of Woods Hole, I just can't believe that 14, what you've called shorter or 40-foot, these so-called straight trucks on the whole island of the Vineyard are, clogging up all of your main arteries. To me, that again just makes little to no sense. And I'd also like to point out that Mr. Malkin has always emphasized the arrival of goods on the island, the 5:30 out of Woods Hole. Each year now, for several years, we have also asked for the elimination of the 5:30 from the Vineyard. And Mr. Malkin has never asked you to strongly support the 5:30 from the Vineyard, which is not only in the summer, but is 365 days of the year. Those trucks coming off the 5:30, they reach Woods Hole a little after 6. Also, incredibly loud, incredibly noisy. They wake us up daily, including in the middle of the summer when your overall truck numbers are down. It just makes a little sense for you to be so injurious to the Woods Hole Falmouth community, yet so insistent that this is the only solution you can find. For the last 3 years, as far as I can tell, you've made no compromises after our public hearings. If anything, you've eliminated the prior through a Section 15A report the Woods Hole Falmouth Noise and Traffic Working Group, which met for over 2 years. 2 of us were appointed officially by our Board of Selectmen to be on this working group. You simply eliminated it, stopped convening it. So we've seen no progress. We've seen no compromise. We've seen no effort on the part of the steamship senior staff to provide some creative solutions, especially given these much larger vessels that are coming online. Again, it just makes no sense to us. Those were my main points. I hope they'll find their way into the report. And maybe just as a final point, today we've not heard from the Vineyard at all. Maybe someone will speak up. Each year, the ratio of Falmouth residents opposed, in some cases vehemently opposed, like myself, to the very early boats that are waking us up so early, are generally shared with you at a ratio of 10-1 today. We haven't heard from a single vineyard, from a single vineyard voice supporting your schedule. This also makes no sense to me. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Nat. I think I see Mary has her hand raised again, as does Mr. Woodwell. Why don't we take Mr. Logan?
I already brought.
Oh, it's okay.
Just gonna bring Mary over,
Well,
sorry.
I didn't give everybody to get an opportunity before, but anyway, let Mary go.
Yeah,
Hi, Mary.
and thank you very much. And just FYI, it's pronounced Musakia, not a big deal.
Musakia, okay. I'm gonna-
Since I was
I'm
in
gonna-
grade school, they would stutter over it and I just raised my hand and say who
I
I was. So
appreciate it. I'm gonna
Not a
write it
big deal.
phonetically.
I wanted to add one point or emphasize one point that Damian Kuffler made, which was about the drivers from the New Bedford, because I do believe you can move with 41 North in their proposal, you can move more freight coming out of New Bedford. What I was sort of gobsmacked at when I heard that the drivers could not be on that boat with their truck. And under any other scenario, and again, I have no real understanding why, because it makes no sense to me. I don't think a 200-pound person added on a freight truck is going to make any difference for that reason. What I would like to say is I think it's just critical that things be changed to facilitate the movement of the freight to New Bedford, which would include allowing the drivers to go with their vehicle, which would possibly and probably lower the necessity for that 5:30 transport, because essential things could come on later, non-essential, time-sensitive freight can come out of New Bedford. But if you make it impossible, under any parlance, I would think antitrust, where you're trying to prohibit commerce by doing something that makes it irrational and unable to, to engage. So, my immediate reaction is, why would somebody have a rule like that unless they wanted to stifle commerce of that type? And that usually falls under some other rubric of antitrust violations and all that, which is probably not the case here at all. But again, it's sort of monopolistic practices that are not necessary, and I can't figure out why they're there. So I just wanted to touch on that one point that Mr. Kuffler made in sort of a different way, and urge you all to get rid of the 5:30 and move freight under 41 North or whatever out of New Bedford, wherever and whenever possible. It's ceased to be rational to come this much to try to come in and out of Woods Hole. And if anything, Nat's chart shows where we're heading, which is just not sustainable. It's just not sustainable. There's not enough real estate in that community. So anyway, thank you so much. And again, I hope next time we can do this in person.
Well, Mary, before you go, I will interact with you on this one because I think there's a misunderstanding. So, and I think it might help a lot of folks, and even when we're talking about 41 North, and again, we talked about that again this morning at the Port Council meeting. And what I would encourage people to do is take a look at what they're currently doing and then talk it and understand it. So 41 North doesn't operate a vessel like ours, and quite frankly, we have no, other than licensing authority over them, we have no other grand regulatory control over them. That's the United States Coast Guard. So in part, so they move their freight via tug and barge. And then they make up with our transfer bridge, and they've actually modified their barge so that they can drive the trucks off in Nantucket. But they don't have a certificate of inspection that allows them to carry passengers. So legally, they can't carry, other than their own crew members, people on their barge. So it's much different than what we have, where our freight boats have certificates of inspection from the Coast Guard that permit freight and passengers. So that's a significant difference. And so we don't have any sway. So even if we said they could take passengers, Steamship Authority says, oh, fine, we're fine with that. The Coast Guard's not gonna allow that, and I'm sure the operators of 41 North aren't gonna do that either, because they don't wanna lose their certificates to operate. So that, I wanna make sure that folks are clear on that. And again, their operation is up and running and licensed in Nantucket. As we talked about this morning, you know, you can take a look at the Port Council meeting this morning. All right, so with that,
That's helpful to understand that it's a certificate of authority under the Coast Guard that would allow the truck and the driver to go on the same vehicle or on the same vessel. And so if the Coast Guard gave that certificate of authority, that would be fine as far as you're concerned, and you're licensed to 41 North to be able to take cargo freight from New Bedford to the Vineyard. Do I have that right?
whatever you carry on your vessel has to be a part of your certificate of inspection from the Coast Guard. And they don't have permission to carry passengers on their barge.
But if
So
they
that's
got
why-
that permission, that would be fine then for you, because as I understand it, you license the ability to come into the Vineyard Haven to the docks that are there.
I guess in that scenario, I don't see a tug and barge being permitted to have passengers, but that would be up to the Coast Guard. So in any event, we got some other people here, Mary. I'm gonna move on. So if you have any
Thank you.
questions, just please send them through to me or to the schedules at steamshipauthority.com.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mary. Let's see, who hasn't gone yet? Let's Mr. Logan. Let's take Mr. Logan. Mr. Logan, are you there, sir? Mr. Logan?
No.
I think you're muted, sir.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. That's correct. Yep, go right ahead.
Just a couple of quick notes. Compliments to you this morning with the port meeting. I thought the discussion of 41 North was very enlightening, and I see there's a lot of wisdom in that group of people discussing it. But to this timing today, look, you guys know how to run boats and you know how to run shipping, and but you're not politicians, and you're basically a captured agency. Okay, there's a whole literature in the economic world about regulatory capture. You know, it's way over your head, beyond your pay scale. But basically, it says that when an agency has got some regulatory function, they're subject to being captured by the people they're regulating, and it's turned around from being something they're regulated for the common good to where they're regulated for the people they're regulating. Okay, this is the case here, and was particularly set up because of the way the voting weights are in the Board of Governors, where the islands get to be happily regulated by you guys. At any rate, if you look at the how and when you deliver your goods to the islands, it's almost like the collegiate college gone crazy. It's a pyramid, top of which is the member from the Board of Governors member from the Vineyard, and below him are the merchants that are approving of him, and the shippers approving of him, and maybe some others further down in bigger numbers that are sort of indifferent, happy to have the force feeding that's coming about as opposed to a lifeline. And then at the bottom, I think there are plenty of people who are upset with the egg growth and the congestion, et cetera, et cetera. And then there are the mainland people who are put off or pay much of the cost of that force feeding. So that's about it. That's the end of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Logan. I see, Dan is waiting. She hasn't been, Michelle Barker, are you there, please? I think you're muted. There you are.
Here I am. It takes
We
a
see
minute
you.
for your stuff to upload. I was not going to comment because I've reached a point of having essentially given up in trying to have any changes made. It's perfectly clear to all of us that you hold these hearings because you're required to by law. And I assume that the reason for the law to be the way it is so that you can take testimony and actually include that in your calculations on various topics. But you don't do that. You don't answer our questions. It's very convenient to say, well, we're not going to answer questions. We'll put out a report. And then you put out a self-serving report basically saying, well, we're not going to change anything. I would just like to point out, in addition to seconding everything that has been said today, that you have already grown beyond the bounds of the property you own. You have seized the corner of Luscombe Avenue and Railroad Avenue. You've essentially seized Railroad Avenue as part of your exit ramp for the slip that you swore to the skies was only going to be used for repairs and is clearly being used every day as an active slip. You have also seized the Crane Street Bridge, which only has 2 lanes. And the right-hand lane going towards the steamship has been appropriated as your arrivals lane. And everybody has to slow down and go through the kiosk and then be distributed wherever it is that the cars are distributed. But in the process, as the traffic backs up all the way to Harbor Hill Road sometimes, people who work in the village are not able to get to their work. And people who live anywhere on Juniper Point are not able to get to their homes. I cannot believe that in your authority, you are allowed to prevent tax-paying citizens from reaching their own homes. There was a backup on the bridge yesterday. You're not even on your summer schedule yet, and the traffic is already out of control. And I would like everybody to recognize that if you continue the way you have already been going, you're going to seize more. I don't know how you're going to do it. There's nothing left to seize. You've taken half of Great Harbor. I mean, where are you going with this? Even if you run 24/7, God forbid, but even if you do, all you're doing is increasing and increasing and increasing. You have nowhere to go. And meanwhile, the rest of us can't go where we need to go and are entitled to go because you've taken over. If you want an arrivals ramp, you need to rebuild the Crane Street Bridge. And you're going to say, well, we don't own the Crane Street Bridge. And the state is going to say, well, we don't really own the Crane Street Bridge. The state highway ends at the beginning of the bridge. And you can't say that Tommy Crane owns the Crane Street Bridge because the private road doesn't start until the other side of the Crane Street Bridge. So you have seized a bridge that nobody claims to own, and you're using it not as a highway, but as an arrival ramp for the various boats. At a minimum, you've got to either build a 3rd lane on that bridge or find a way for the people of Woods Hole to go about their business without having to wait in a standby line with the tourists. It's absolutely, it's already intolerable. And you hide behind your status as a quasi-governmental authority and shrug your shoulders. It's just, I'm sorry. You have to deal with 1/3 of your population in your ports. You cannot simply continue to want to say throw us under the bus, but maybe I should say throw us into your wake. You cannot go on ignoring. Your charter says that you exist for the benefit of all citizens of Massachusetts. Well, all of us here in Woods Hole are citizens of Massachusetts or part-time residents at the very least, and we pay taxes here, and we're being treated like we don't even exist. And I've complained about this in the past. It's inexplicable to me that you could all, everybody that works there apparently doesn't care. You shrug your shoulders. We're a nuisance. You hold these meetings because the law requires you to, but that's all it is to you, is a nuisance. And I give up. I don't know what to say anymore. It's simply impossible. And I'm not going to thank you either, because I think the way the authority has been behaving for years is unacceptable.
I see Mr. Woodwell again, and then Mr. Coughlin.
A couple things have come up in the past several minutes. First is Crane Street Bridge. It's the town of Falmouth that owns Crane Street Bridge, and an effort to set rules for the use of Crane Street Bridge. In that effort, it was the Steamship Authority that exerts control. It asserted its control, its decision-making authority over Crane Street Bridge. It was Steve Sayers who said, effectively, paraphrase of his words, Steve Sayers being the former general counsel of the Steamship Authority and current hired gun, that the Steamship Authority would oppose the town in setting rules that would set appropriate uses for the towns of Falmouth Crane Street Bridge. So yes, we own it. That is the town of Falmouth, and Steamship Authority seeks to control it. There is not a need to ship the tractors back and forth between Martha's Vineyard and New Bedford. You could ship the trailers without the tractors, and the tractor that drops off the trailer can pick up a trailer coming off a barge in the other direction. So I understand that in so many efforts to get around the Steamship Authority and establishing ferry service, whether it's freight, passengers, cars, in between New Bedford and the Vineyard, the latest objection that we just heard a minute ago is that the Coast Guard isn't going to allow that. But I'm going to point out that it's even more efficient not to ship the tractors and the driver back and forth across the water. You leave the tractor and the driver on one side of the water, and you pick up and drop off a trailer in the same trip. Question of credibility of the Steamship Authority has come up. I'm going to point out again that in its efforts to kill off one ferry service after another, it was in 2001 that the Steamship Authority killed off Seabulk, refused to allow Seabulk to run ferry service between New Bedford and Martha's Vineyard. In the very document that it did that, Steve Sayers again writing about the Steamship Authority, quote, in April 1999, the Steamship Authority, the representatives, also voted unanimously, quote, to adopt a goal to reduce freight traffic levels through the ports of Hyannis and Woods Hole to the 1997 levels as soon as practicable, but no later than May 2000 for the Woods Hole Martha's Vineyard run, unquote. And as Nat Trumbull has pointed out, the Steamship Authority has systematically done exactly the opposite. It has systematically killed off the alternatives through New Bedford. Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, even though we pretty much know what the Steamship Authority is going to do under its leadership of the two representatives, one from Nantucket, one from Martha's Vineyard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woodwell. Mr. Coupler. And again, I don't see any other hands outside Mr. Coupler, so if you, oh, there's another one. I don't see any other hands right now, but, again, if folks want, again, we'd like to get some other views as well, so, but Mr. Coupler, you're back on, sir, go ahead.
Thank you. I have two comments. The first, short comments. The first is that it's fascinating how you have play a duplicitous role. Earlier in this meeting, you said, we do not respond. We listen and we will write our answers in a report. However, in the same meeting, in response to a comment that you found inappropriate, you were perfectly happy to respond because it was in your best interest. Does that mean that you cannot and will not answer any other issues because you're in the wrong, that you don't have constructive answers? I don't like the behavior where you're completely self-defensive and standing up to defend yourself anytime you can and ignore anything when you don't want to. The second issue is I'm fully aware of the Coast Guard regulations about passengers on the tugboat or on the barge. That was not my issue. The issue, and that was addressed just recently, that why then did the Steamship Authority put in its regulation that they could not carry passengers? If that decision is up to the 41 North, whoever else is doing it, to get the permission, then it's up to them. But you inserted that into the regulation for getting the potential contract. And when asked if they got it, the permit to carry passengers, would you approve it? You refused to answer. Again, it's not clear that if a barge somehow got Coast Guard approval or they managed to do something to get the drivers there, that you would approve it. I would like to know an answer if the barging company got approval to have passengers or transport them, would you approve the amend your contract agreement with some company like 41 North to allow them to transport passengers?
I think, well, with respect to that, sir, I think if there was a licensed operator who met the requirements of our licensing policy and they could carry passengers, then we would take a look at that. Again, we don't, here as staff, we don't make those decisions.
Yes, you're avoiding
excuse me, Mr. Coupler, give me a minute to say what you wanted me to respond, did you not? Okay, so if the folks met the requirements of the licensing policy and they had the requisite documentation from the Coast Guard and they met all the requirements, we could consider making that recommendation to the board, and it is our board that makes those decisions, not the staff. So to your point, I think at times, sir, I think you're mixing facts, and again, I don't want to get into a confrontation with you, but I think you're mixing facts, so.
No,
I
I'm
see
not
another
mixing
hand here, I
facts.
see Ms. Laster, here. sir.
Is that you have in the agreement that they cannot. You could have left that out and allowed them to try and get the permit. You did not have to include it. This is the type of behavior that makes people not trust you guys because everything is suspect. Even if it's not, shouldn't be suspect, we have no reason to believe it isn't suspect. And in your answer, you're saying, I'm misunderstanding, but I clearly understand the regulations. Goodbye.
Ms. Laster, you're up. Ms. Laster. Ms.
Again,
Laster, are you there? Yeah, go ahead, we can hear you.
Is deficient, correct? Again, I'm speaking for me, not for the Woods Hole Film Festival. Please add the following questions to the list that I would like written responses from you about. How has your organization been following the recommendations of the consultants that you hired to issue the report? What's it, HMI, I forget what they were called, many years ago? Have all those recommendations been implemented? If not, why not? Where's your strategic plan? We haven't seen it. Will that strategic plan actually address issues that people have been asking you about? If not, why not? Have you made the decision about 41 North already? Who makes the recommendations to the board? Is it you as the attorney? Is it other staff? I don't quite understand how the board is provided with information. So please tell us your process and Yeah, I mean, as far as the issues around 41 North and what they can and can't carry, it seems like you are doing everything possible to avoid having to approve a perfectly valid respondent to your request for companies that will provide that service. You issued an RFP prior to the one that 41 North responded to that had no responses. Are you going to reissue that? Clearly, it was a problematic RFP. If you're not going to reissue it, why not? If you are going to reissue it, when? And that RFP was for transporters other than the steamship. That's it.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Laster. Anybody else, Sean?
No, we're done. But I won.
Any more? No, I don't see much. Well, with that, I don't see any more hands raised. Again, this is a recording, will be available to folks after the hearing. We appreciate people taking the time to make their contributions, and we'll be having going through the information and drafting the report in short order. So thank you.